Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Michele Glass here. Welcome back to another conversation about the brain. We're looking here at the structure called the cerebellum. So the cerebellum is named as in like baby cerebrum because it's got folding to increase surface area, just like we saw with the cerebrum. It also has two hemispheres, just like we saw with the cerebrum, and it's the second largest part of the brain. It's the second largest part of the brain. Now, what we'll see for the job of the cerebellum is that it's going to receive sensory information. It's going to receive information from our vision, visual information, auditory information, balance information, proprioception. Remember, this is kind of that new term that is talking about the information about the position of our synovial joints. So this is helping us to understand the position of our body in space. It's giving us information about our movements. So we had a term for that. Double check my spelling. Kinesthesia. Okay. So we're seeing that the cerebellum is getting all this kind of sensory information, and it's also going to receive, I'm going to say, a copy of our signal from the primary motor cortex. Primary motor cortex, remember, was located in the frontal lobe. So that's part of the conscious control of our skeletal muscle. It's part of our conscious control of our skeletal muscle. And what we'll see then is that the cerebellum is controlling about 20% of its work is the coordination of skeletal muscle movements. And this is like what we can call like muscle memory. Muscle memory is talking about learned movements of the body, learned movements of the body. Movements of the body that can go almost to autopilot because you have trained it to that level. So if you've ever taken care of a little person around, it's hard for me to remember, like 5, 6 months of age, they start to sit up on their own. Or maybe it's even younger, like 4 months, right? So these little people in their first year of development are first starting to learn how to sit up. And it's so significant. They can sit their bodies up, right? And hold their body in that upright position without toppling over. Before this, you have to kind of prop those little people up, right? You have to prop them up, and now they can do it on their own. And so they practice and they practice and they practice getting their body in an upright position and holding their body in that position, right? Until pretty soon, you just plop that little person on their bum and they sit up and they can grab all the toys and it's no big deal. And from there, they process how to locomote, right? So they process how to crawl, or my little person learned by scooting around on their booty, right? So there's different ways of doing this kind of crawling. And then like 1 or so. They are pulling up and standing, and from there it's taking steps. That little person is now walking, and from there it starts running, right? And so it's this whole process of learning how to do those things. Well, when you're 43, you don't have to think about, oh, how do I raise my body into an upright position? You just are like, I'm going to sit down, right? I'm going to sit down and watch this show. I'm going to sit down and make this video, right? I'm going to sit down and do whatever. I don't have to think about how to get my body into the upright position. I don't have to think about how to hold my body in that position. The cerebellum is doing it for me on a more complex level. If you're a trained athlete, right? If you swim, if you dance, if you play any sport, if you play a musical instrument, if you draw, any kind of hobby that involves physical movement through practice, you teach the body how to do that. And now you can think about what song you want to play and whether you want it to be loud or quiet, and what's the emotional feeling you want to give out with that particular song. And you're not even thinking about how to hold or play your instrument. You're thinking about the song, right? And so that's because that's muscle memory. That's the cerebellum taking over. I went too far into that, right? The cerebellum is pretty cool. Postural movements would be the other. So we kind of went into that as we talked about those little people learning how to sit up for the first time, right? Holding themselves upright. Okay, so what is the cerebellum doing the rest of the time? Like 80% of the time, what's it going to be doing? And this is so cool. So this is like some new research. It's not actually in your text. I'll give you a link on in the video description. I'll give you a link in the video description. But the rest of the time, we're getting some kind of higher order functioning. We're getting some abstract thinking happening here. We're getting some forward planning happening here. We're getting some holding of memories happening here. We're getting some producing words while speaking happening here. Okay, and look at this. The cerebellum is going to help edit thoughts and smooth out emotions. And when we talk about it doing the posture and the muscle memories, you know, you could also say like it's helping to smooth out our movements, right? And so I like to talk about the cerebellum as like, I want it thick here. I like to talk about the cerebellum as giving us grace. Grace in our movements, grace in our thinking and our emotions and our interactions with others. And here's an easy way to think about it. Alcohol reduces cerebellar function. So if you can consider yourself or someone you know under the influence of alcohol versus sober, and the changes that happen in the coordination of your movements, the changes that happen in the coordination of your thoughts, the changes that happen in like your filter of what to say and what not to say, or how to say the thing you want to say, that's the cerebellum. And so, you know, think about, you know, sometimes it's easier to think about like when it's not working. So the person who's under the influence versus the person with an intact, fully functioning, sober cerebellum. That's the grace that we get from this particular part of the brain. And so let's take a look real quick. Now I talked a lot this time. Let's take a look real quick at our diagram. So again, we're looking at this image of our okay, hang on. Okay, so we're taking a look here at the picture that we've been working with, labeling our model from the lab. And remember, the cerebellum has two hemispheres. And here we see that the cerebellum is cut in half. So just like we're seeing the left hemisphere of the cerebrum, we're seeing the left hemisphere of the cerebellum, and notice it's positioned underneath the cerebrum. Notice it's got this like anatomical connection to the pons, that particular part of the brainstem. And notice here we can see the folding of the cerebellum, just like we saw with the cerebrum. So that's what we're talking about here. Okay. Last video on the brain is a brain wave video. So stay tuned for that. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other.